All right, everyone, things are moving quickly in relation to Iran. Of course, a few days ago, some tankers get hit. Trump says it's insignificant, doesn't really fucking care. A U.S. drone got shot down either over, depending on who you ask, it was either over Iranian or international airspace, so it's not even clear. Nobody can tell you for sure. And Trump's response at first was, oh, somebody made a boo-boo. Somebody made a big mistake. Now, of course, when Trump says stuff like this was 4D chess, this part. The other part of this that I'll be talking about isn't, and it's kind of disturbing for Trump and anyone else, although I think I know the reasoning why. That's the yesterday ordering strikes and then standing them down. I will talk about that. That's the main story. But as far as him saying some dumb general made a big mistake, it could be taken as a threat, like, oh, you made a big mistake, I'm going to pound the shit out of you, and it could be basically just seen as patronizing, and ultimately seem to be a way out for Iran. Basically an offer of, hey, just admit that one of your generals pressed a button accidentally because you didn't realize the drone was over international airspace, and we'll call it a day so that we don't have to do anything further. Which, of course, Iran didn't apparently take the notion to heart, unfortunately. That's on Iran, not on the U.S. on that one, because it's kind of obvious that's what was meant. But then Trump the other day apparently ordered strikes on targets within Iran, only to then pull them back and stand the forces down. And I think I know, I'm hoping that I'm right with this, and bear with me. Trump has been palling around with Henry Kissinger. If you look at the Kissinger strategy, it seems to inform basically all of Trump's foreign policy overtures. Make yourself look like you're about to go off, but at the same time there's a sliver of hope and you'd better fucking grab it because otherwise World War III begins. Look like a madman. It was called the madman strategy. What would happen is nuclear-capable U.S. bombers under Kissinger, the idea was you flew them right next to the border with China or Russia or something, basically buzz their planes, just be as antagonistic and nutty as possible. Make it look like you're itching for a nuclear war and the enemy will try to eventually avoid. Eventually they back down. Eventually, of course, later on we have the Star Wars strategy and they spend themselves into oblivion. This even informs the economic ventures that Trump is making. It makes it look like he's itching for a worldwide Great Depression when he threatens, I'm going to tariff this, tariff that, this trade deal's off, embargo here, sanctions there. It makes him look unhinged. It makes it look like he's willing to break all the toys if he doesn't get his way, bringing people to the negotiation table. It worked with Korea, and still is to a more modest level. It seems to be working better at getting the ROK and DPRK to talk, which is, what we need anyway. It worked kind of with China, on North Korea, as well as on trade, although that's stalled. It certainly worked on Mexico. It worked well with them, and it worked well with Germany and the EU at large. So largely, it's been a successful strategy. We haven't had any major military escalations. The problem is that Iran is not the same as Iraq. Iran is not the same as Syria. Iran has much more military capability and is much more directly a vassal of Russia. So I'm hoping that this is his Kissinger strategy again. Basically, the idea is make it look like, at the very last second he pulled back on strikes that the inside circle knew weren't actually going to happen. The problem is always the same as it was throughout the Cold War. This is like the plot of Dr. Strangelove. Even if the heart isn't really there to have the nuclear war. Even if people in the know, like pal, you're like in Dr. Strangelove, spoiler alert here. President of the U.S. and the Premier of Russia, when they're talking about the fact that there may be a nuclear war over a rogue general actually organizing a nuclear strike, when they're talking about the doomsday device going off and stuff like that, they're very conciliatory and it's very flowery and friendly to the point it's almost a bromance. And the problem is that there's always the possibility someone who's not in the know, because of the opaque nature of military endeavors, presses the wrong button, gets the wrong idea, feeds the wrong intel to someone. This is what I think happened with our whole intel chain with regards to everyone other than the Clinton campaign and maybe a few lower-level FBI agents. I think that for the most part, the Russia probe was triggered by mistake. I think it was because of the opaque, compartmentalized nature of government, nobody thought to seriously question what was happening. Those that did got shut up because of the opaque nature of the intel agencies. And so I fully believe that Mueller was like smacking himself in the head on his third brandy at some point after the probe when he realized that he had been activated for no real legitimate purpose. And that's what I'm hoping is happening here, though, is a very controlled sort of situation. I'm hoping that it's a diplomatic maneuver more than a potential military one, because striking Iran is not really on the fucking table. What happens? Here's the other problem. I will say this. If we strike Iran, Russia will have no choice but to belly up to the bar and get real fucking aggressive. They might strike one of our allies in the region. And then it becomes a real big fucking problem real fucking quick. Russia may have to act in an antagonistic manner because we've just backed them into a corner. If we attack Iran, that's sort of their red line. Is Putin willing to enforce it? Well, we know, of course, Obama wasn't willing to enforce the U.S. red line because he's a good globalist. Trump has been. Trump has already conducted strikes in Iraq and in Syria and elsewhere as well. I think Afghanistan and other places too. We've already been conducting major operations when antagonized under Trump. Now, this is really great generally for preventing people. This is sort of speak loudly and carry a big stick at the same time policy. Largely it works, but then there have to be some no-go situations. The paradox is this. There can't be a no-go zone where you don't enforce that policy. Otherwise, you look weak. But if you end up enforcing that policy when antagonized, you potentially force others to enforce their own red lines, leading to a mutually assured destruction-style situation. I oppose any strikes on Iran. I think that diplomacy should reign. I don't feel antagonized or threatened by Iran. Iran doesn't even have nukes. The big problem is the Russian bear deciding to wake up, and then we have a nuclear standoff. Now, of course, I'm confident in the U.S. military's ability to protect the country even against Russia. But, I mean, they're still modernizing some of their bigger weapons. But it wouldn't be fun. I mean, it was like 2 minutes to midnight. Don't try 2 seconds to midnight. At the very least, we need some really good music. So look, we haven't even had a revival of like the 80s synthwave sort of thing to talk about. We don't even have like Atomic by Blondie anymore, or 99 Luftballons and cool shit like that. We certainly don't have any Oppenheimer analysis. At least we need to have good music and weird like slasher flicks and stuff, movies that are just nothing but explosions back. If we want to go into the 80s diplomacy again, we should at least get the 80s culture back. That's what I want to see. We need another David Bowie a la Modern Love or something. Only dude who can make Selling Out look cool, I suppose. And then Vladimir Putin is no Gorbachev, unfortunately, so it'd be a difficult time. It's going to be difficult for us to deal, I think, with this situation. Trump appears to be trying to maneuver the other day, extending the olive branch of just blame some dumbass general, like, oh, it's his first day on the job, he accidentally fired on a U.S. drone the wrong way. That's basically his way of saying, okay, here's your easy way out. You better take the door, though, real quick. And now he's trying to force him to do that by threatening military strikes that he pulls back on. But the strikes didn't happen. For all of the people, the black pill are saying, oh, see, look, Trump, wants to go to war with Iran. Well, we're not at war with Iran. We're posturing. I mean, it's not strikes. It's a threat of strike. It's strikes that were called up and then defeated at the same time by the same person who had called them. It's obviously some sort of strategy. There's no legitimate reason you would call for strikes on targets and then pull them back. That just looks crazy. Well, that's the Kissinger strategy. It's not an actual... It's not like you want to strike, but the other problem is this. Even in aggressive posturing towards Iran, the main ally of Russia, especially within the region, even calling on them and pulling them back, being that antagonistic, could cause Russia to enter the region. And of course, we're not going to strike anything if Russian assets are in the area, because that would be a crazy idea. There was one point when in Yugoslavia... days, I think. No, it was the Kosovo-Serbia conflict, if I remember correctly. There was one point at which Russians were occupying an airport, and U.S. troops had gotten one of those U.S. generals that's in politics in the Democratic Party, I believe, was the one that ordered them to go into the airport and clear it out and occupy it. And the Russians said, "We'll fire on you if you try." And they were given the order anyway. And then a lower field commander, I can't remember his name, said, no, we're not going to be doing that because that's crazy. And probably stopped, potentially a re-escalation of the Cold War years early and possibly a nuclear standoff. This has been the case before. In the Cuban Missile Crisis, we did come within inches of a nuclear war. The nuclear strike was actually ordered on the coast of Florida by a Russian sub-commander, and the general commander managed to... who, by the way, was the under-commander of the sub for some reason, weird sort of brass structure they have, said no. and it required 3 people to agree, and 2 of them said, yeah, let's strike. The other one said, let's poke our head up there and see if there's actually been a nuclear war, because they lost radio contact with Moscow, and so they thought it had been hit by nukes. That's about all. Peace out.